Hello, everyone. This is Diane Hodiak, Executive Director of 350 Deschutes. We regret that we had that half an hour of non-broadcasting. We went into, we're broadcasting from the college, and they thought they had an active shooter here. And so we went into lockdown. As it turns out, it was not an active shooter. It was somebody holding up a compass, somebody calling 911, and then things kind of escalating from there because they have a protocol that they do here at the college to keep everyone safe, and it automatically locks all the doors and shuts off the internet. You truly go into lockdown. So we'll be going right ahead with our presentation at this point. Usually I have an intro with our sponsors, but you've been looking at those. We do have one of our sponsors in this session, Purelight Power. And we will begin with Purelight Power with their presentation with Clint Reinhard.
Hey guys, my name is Clint Reinhard. I work with Purelight Power. We are a solar installer here in Oregon. And I'm really excited about this. Basically, for the next 15 minutes, I'm just going to explain to you the basics of solar, how it works, the average cost, green initiatives, how much you're going to save the world. That's what we're trying to do, but also how much you're going to save on your utility bill and the added value added to your home, but also maybe some incentives, things like that. So we'll dive right into it. Let me share my screen here and let's look at, made this beautiful PowerPoint for you. Residential solar basics. So starting off, when I go out to restaurants, people see, okay, Clint, you work for Purelight Solar. Should I really go solar? And I ask them one question. Do you own your home? Now, there's a lot of other qualifiers to go in solar, but if you own your home and everything works out right, go solar yesterday. It is a financial no-brainer. It is an environmental no-brainer. It's beautiful, but you have to be on title. There's a few other asterisks once they say, yeah, go solar yesterday, is that your utility provider, that is very important. Now, most of our customers are with Pacific Power or PG&E, and they're very friendly to solar installers and to their customers. Now, there's a lot of co-ops throughout Oregon, and they can make sense. Some of them do, some of them don't, but hey, that's all part of the discovery process. Now, shade, that's a big one because it's solar power. If the panels aren't getting sun, they're not producing power. It's not a deal breaker because I have a lot of installs where you would look at it and think, nah, this is a lot of trees, but we can work around that. I have a lot of customers that say, I don't have a south-facing roof, so no, I'm not interested in solar. And basically anything except a north-facing roof is pretty good. Yes, south-facing is our favorite because that gets sun in the morning, gets sun in the evening, all day, all year. Those panels are just cranking. But I have a lot of installs on east-west. It can make sense. Taxable income is actually a big guy because the biggest incentive, we'll talk about those more later, but the biggest one comes from the federal government. And if you're not paying into taxes, you're not going to see any money back from them. And then credit. All of my competitors, hey, we all take checks. Yes, you can pay cash. Most of my customers finance because they don't have 10, 20, 80 grand just sitting around. And if they do, they usually go and buy a boat. But for financing, we like to see above 650, but we have options down to, hey, if you're above 580, we can talk. Now, I wanted to do this slide because there's a lot of common misconceptions. I mean, shoot, I had them when I started. But the biggest one that I see is, hey, I want to go solar, but I don't want to write a big fat check. And that was the case. For several years, you had to pay cash for solar. The nice thing is because the technology has gotten to where the panels last a really long time. Shoot, our panels, they're rated for 40 years. So yeah, we can do financing now, which is nice. So no, you don't have to write a big fat check. In fact, I'll tell you, our tagline is, go solar for no money down, no money out of pocket. Sounds beautiful. I'll get into that in a little bit, but a lot of people think, oh, so it's free. It's like, well, there's a cost. It is a product, but we'll talk about that. No, you don't have to write a big check. Second one, we already kind of talked about this, but no, I don't have a south-facing roof, so I can't go solar. Like I said, east, west, not a problem. East, those panels are just cooking in the morning. Yeah, they stop producing. West produces in the evening. I lose about 10 to 20% productivity when I put them on east-west, but it is still a viable option. I need a battery. I love talking about batteries. Shoot, when I started with Purelight, I thought, no, solar, so you need a battery. Batteries make sense in certain parts of the country. Oregon really isn't one of them. And I'll kind of explain that on the next slide, but no, you don't need a battery. You don't want a battery. Frankly, the technology just really isn't there yet. So every solar install that we do, and I assume most of my competitors, they're all battery ready. So when the technology gets there, cool. But for right now, you don't want a battery. I love this one. No, my power bill is not that high. I don't need solar. And I have ran into customers where they're not using enough power to justify solar. Absolutely. But as long as you're above about $50 a month on average, solar is a good idea. So this is how solar works. If you guys get anything out of my presentation, I need it to be this page. But it's called net metering, and it's different utility provider to utility provider, but this is how it works on most of them, is that here you got your power company, right? And they're running that power from the line up to your meter. Now you flip on your lights, you run your microwave, you watch TV, your meter starts spinning, right? I guess they're all digital now, but the old school ones, they're spinning. Every time that disc spins around, that's 1 kilowatt hour. It's how the utility provider measures your power consumption, how much power you're using. It's a teaspoon of power, right? So in the wintertime, when you're running your heat and got your Christmas lights on, that thing's just like a Frisbee, right? So solar, and this is why you don't need a battery, is I come in and I throw solar on your roof, right? Solar's simple. Solar's boring. It's got one job. It takes sunlight and it makes power, right? So what we do is we take all that power and we just put it right back onto your meter. Now, on a gorgeous summer day, when those panels are just collecting crazy amounts of sun, they're producing way more power than you're using throughout the day, a surprising amount. But where does that excess power go? I said we're not getting batteries. So basically, if you were to watch your meter, you'd see it stop and start to spin the other way. Your meter would spin backwards as you're just dumping all this power back onto the power grid. Here you go, it's just getting kicked back. Now, most utility providers see that as you giving them power, and they owe you power. Every kilowatt hour you give, they asterisks on that one, but you're giving them power, they're going to give you something for it. So daytime, you're just kicking power, kicking power, kicking power. Nighttime, yeah, you just start pulling it because the panels aren't producing power at night, but you still want to use your power. Well, you're still hooked up to the grid, so you just start pulling that power back. Now, like I said, with that asterisk, it depends on your utility company. With Pacific Power and PG&E, every kilowatt hour you give them, they owe you a kilowatt hour. With co-ops, it's touch and go, and that's on us and you guys to kind of do your research and find out which one makes sense. But that's how solar works. That's why you don't need a battery. Some case studies. So I'm going to give you one example here, and yes, I cherry picked my favorite, but we'll talk about averages. So our clients see an average, the big one, going green, right? So on average, we're gonna stop you from releasing 10,000 pounds of CO2 gas into the atmosphere because you're no longer reliant on fossil fuels, right? You going solar is the equivalent of you not releasing 10,000 pounds of CO2 into the atmosphere. You going solar is the same as planting 180 trees, which I use that one when I have to talk to people about cutting down a tree or two, which is ironically a very funny part of my job, offering clean green energy and telling people to cut down trees. But it's the same as you planting 180. Cool. And then, yeah, you're going to save money over time. And all of these are based on a 25-year ROI, which we can talk about. But our average customer saves almost $20,000, including the cost of the system. Oh, I do want to talk about that. Our ROI is based on assuming that your utility costs are going to continue to increase. They fluctuate, but kind of like gas, they fluctuate in one direction. Now, this is my favorite because, shoot, we're adding value to the home, but I'm always very clear on this. So our clients on average add over $20,000 to the value of your home. So yeah, you're saving quite a bit of money here, but then you should get some of that back when you sell your house. We can go into this, I'll dive into it, but I'm always very clear that this is my cherry on top, because I can't guarantee this. I mean, your house is only worth what your next homeowner is willing to pay for it. But it's a permanent permitted structure, just like adding a barn or a shop. So I say, how can it not add value to your home? I mean, you got your home and then your neighbor's home, both exactly the same. You go solar, most people would pay more for this because they don't have a utility bill. I mean, if I don't have to pay $100, $150 a month, yeah, I'll pay more for this house, because I don't know about you, but I can do a lot with $150 a month. But we'll talk about that in a bit. Let's come back. Case study. So I'll show you one example here. I'll pull up this guy. So keep his name out of it, but this was his system. Like I said, I cherry picked my favorite because pure south facing, no shade. It was gorgeous. But for this guy here, we'll scroll down. We did 39 panels. And this graph, kind of like what I was talking about a little earlier, daytime pushing power, nighttime pulling power. But his bill, like most people that I see, here you got January, February, March. The blue bars represent his power consumption, how much power he's pulling in, that meter's spinning, right? Higher in the wintertime, lower in the summer, other than July and August when he was running his AC. But in the wintertime, running his heat, Christmas lights are on longer because we have shorter days. Now, this yellow line represents his solar production. Obviously, solar produces more in the summertime because we got longer days, better sun angles. So anytime he's here overproducing, he's just building up those credits. You know, pushing power, Pacific Power owes him every kilowatt hour he gives them, they owe it to him, right? So that when he gets into the wintertime, now they owe him those credits, and he's going to use those to apply for all of these overages. Basically, we get to what we call 100% solar offset, meaning the panels produce enough power throughout the entire year that he doesn't have an energy bill. Now we talk about the cost, right? I said go solar for no money down, no money out of pocket. So he was paying about $213 a month. No money down, meaning there's no down payment. He's not paying for install or permitting. No money out of pocket, meaning this is my cost, $200 that he has to pay Purelight for 39 panels. So no money out of pocket in that I will never ask him to pay this until he stops paying his utility bill, right? So it's accounting free, basically. It's a bill swap. It's money he was already going to pay. Now he just puts it into the house. But the biggest thing, like I said, with those 3.5% increases that we assume, is that here in 5 years, he's going to be paying $250 a month. 10 years, 15. So you see, this is a fixed flat rate, his solar payment. But this is going to keep going up and up. So that's where the long-term savings come in down here. And again, you pay it off and you don't have either one, which is great. Now, I want to talk about, well, yeah, the green incentive, this for him, 20,000 pounds of CO2 that he's not releasing into the atmosphere, 360 trees he was planting, and he added $40,000 to his home. I can't guarantee that, but shoot, even if it only adds $10,000, it's still better than what he'd get if he didn't go solar, which doesn't add anything to his house. But let's talk about some incentives. So coming back here, the case studies, finish there, incentives. Screen sharing is paused. This is really professional, isn't it? There we go. Beautiful. Incentives. Myself and most of my competitors, shoot, we want to use every single incentive that we can. Keeps the cost low for our customers and we get more installs. The biggest one is the federal tax credit, 26%. That's a quarter of my cost, which is huge. Gosh, we use it. Meaning if my system costs $10,000, you guys get $2,600 back from the federal government. $20,000, $5,200, whatever it is, 26% flat, right? The asterisk on that is that you have to be paying into taxes. I have people that aren't paying taxes, so they qualify for it, but they're not going to get it. Fortunately, there's another one. It's called Solar Within Reach, and it depends on your utility provider and the people in your household, your income. But no, if you're not paying taxes, there's another bucket that we can put you in where it's up to $9,000 for qualified homes, which is great. And this one I'm really excited about. They released this, it kicked off September 27th of this year, Oregon, because they used to have a big incentive and then it went away. And they promised in 2020, they ran out of their budget real quick and they kept saying, no, we're going to release more funds. And then something happened around March of 2020, I forget, but oh, hey, that's why we're doing this on video. That's where all their money went. Hey, now it's coming back. So up to $30,000 for low income homes, up to $5,000 for moderate high income homes, free money. Let's take advantage of it. So big incentives, which is awesome. Guys, that kind of wraps it up. Basics of solar, and shoot, I was trying to get out of here pretty quick. So let's open it up for questions. And yeah, I'm going to kick it back. Thank you guys very much. And let me end this.
Well,
Thanks,
thank you so much, Clint. I have to say that we are putting solar on too with Purelight Power, although we did make it pretty easy for Clint because we'd had solar before and we knew that everything he had on his sheet here is absolutely true. So, but thank you very much for that very thorough presentation. I see that we are getting some questions. We're going to roll with Sherrie Villmark next from Community Energy Project, and we will take questions at the very end. So, but please feel free to put those questions in the chat because we're going to try to answer as many of those as we can. Here is Sherrie Villmark from Community Energy Project.
Hi, everybody. Let's see, I cannot share my screen, probably because we had to start over from when we all got together. There we go. Thank you. So I'm Sherrie and I'm with Community Energy Project, and I'm going to talk to you today about community solar, which is a different option that can work really well for folks that rooftop solar doesn't work for. Community Energy Project is a Multnomah County-based organization. We usually focus on education around weatherization, lead poisoning prevention. Now we're talking about solar. We also provide direct home services for seniors and people with disabilities. So we're in a lot of homes doing weatherization, energy analysis and upgrades, and safety-related repairs. Our forte is really working with low-income and frontline communities, and I have been doing work at CEP myself for 15 years. CEP, we are the low-income facilitator for the Oregon Community Solar Program. So I'm going to go through the basics of what is community solar and how we went about designing a program for low-income communities, and why that's important. And we're going to talk through also how you can sign up for solar yourself. So what's community solar? How's it different than rooftop solar? Well, what we had is a bill that passed in 2016 that wants us to have much cleaner energy in the grid. We still use a pretty surprising amount of coal in order to power our homes. And there's actually been another bill even since this one that just passed that moves these timelines up. But inside of this bill, so that we wanted to make community solar something that's available, and that 10% of that project of the entire program has to be reserved for low-income customers. So we were brought in not as solar experts, but specifically as low-income and frontline community experts. Community solar is basically a huge array that people can sign up for little sections of, and then you can receive energy benefits. So it's the subscription service that you subscribe to, say, a section of a giant solar array, and then you can get discounts on your bill and pay subscription fees all on your utility bill if you are a PGE, Pacific Power, or Idaho Power customer. And there are some rooftop solar. There's a lot of reasons why rooftop solar doesn't work for folks, right? You can have financial costs, maybe a barrier, credit impacts, maintenance issues. You might not own a home, right? If you move around a lot, then you can't really rip the panels off and pack them around with you very easily. We work with a lot of people who have very poor roofs. Roof condition can be an issue. Electrical can be an issue. You may have to have panel upgrades, or lack of sun exposure can all be issues. And so community solar really is about breaking down the barriers that rooftop has. So especially for low income folks, there's no upfront costs really, or termination fees. You don't handle the maintenance. Program managers, project managers, handle the maintenance for their solar arrays. The panels are off-site, so they are not connected physically with your property. So you can actually take your subscription with you as long as you continue to be a PGE or Pacific Power or Idaho Power customer. And they're open to anyone, regardless of housing. You can live in an RV, you can live in a mobile home, you can live in an apartment or a condo. As long as you have a meter in your name for one of the major utilities, you can be a community solar customer. It is a subscription service. So what we have are these project managers, and they're the ones that create the solar arrays. They're the ones that work out all the financing and the details and where should this array go. And it's them that you have a relationship with, and you sign on to their projects. They're the point of contact, and they could be a community-based organization. A lot of them are solar developers, but there are special carve-outs hoping to entice other kinds of organizations, such as housing organizations or nonprofits. The subscriptions last between 10 and 20 years. It depends on the project manager. So here's like another way to look at it. Like if you were to, it's not quite so literally like you own this section of panels, but figuratively, this is pretty accurate. So we can have a mix of a grocery store or different families or a nonprofit. You can have all these different varieties of organizations and individuals that all have sections of the array and all get discounts. And the way it works for low-income folks especially, this is a really accurate graph where you would pay, it's volumetric, meaning as the panels are producing more energy, the subscription fees go up. This way, you're not having, you can see these little orange dots are what you're paying in subscription fees. And the green bars are what you're getting in credits. So what you do is you pay the credits out of the subscription fees. Sorry, that's backwards. You pay the subscription fees out of the credits. And for low-income folks, their bills are never allowed to go up, not even in January or December. For general market folks, the bill is going to go up a little bit in those months. But overall, you're going to see this kind of trend. So when we became part of this project, we were asked to design a program for low-income folks. And this is a common issue we have where a lot of other states are really looking at this model to see if it pays off. This is the team that delivers community solar. You have the Public Utility Commission. They're the ones that make the decisions. Energy Solutions is the program administrator, and Community Energy Project is the low-income facilitator. And Energy Trust of Oregon doesn't have a title, but they're very involved. So you can actually see out of a 3-organization team that is the program administration team, 1/3 of that is dedicated to a low-income lens. There was a great deal of anxiety early on in the process about the low-income requirements not being successful because low-income people are, quote unquote, too in crisis to care about the environment, and that's why they don't participate in these programs. And we were making the argument that maybe you have an undesirable program and the problem is you. So we were wanting to create a program that is desirable and that looks at the real barriers that low-income people face so that they too can be a part of something that's really exciting and interesting. Solar has not been equitably distributed. Every study on the topic says that even when you take into account homeownership and income, solar panels are simply not sold to everybody that can qualify. And there are a lot of reasons why that is, from marketing tactics to who works in the solar industry, what they look like and who they sell to, and everything else. So we know that it has not been equitably distributed when we look at race and ethnicity. And we know that when it comes to who bears the greatest burden when it comes to the climate crisis, these are, your so-called frontline communities, low-income people, people of color, women, immigrant groups. This is who, we saw what happened with Hurricane Katrina. We saw who died in the terrible heat dome that Oregon faced just this June. Who is the one that pays the most deeply, and who is the one who also inversely has the smallest carbon footprint? It's always these frontline communities, and they haven't really had an opportunity to take an active part in renewable energy and gather the benefits that come from it. That we just learned about all the great benefits that can come from solar. And so community solar is really looking at, like, how can we spread those benefits around more equitably? So a large part of our role was to say, all right, fine. What is the low-income facilitator's role? Program design was a big one. Here are the income qualifications. We picked state median income, thinking about how state median income is more equitable for rural communities that come from really low-income counties and areas to be able to qualify as well. So we took that into account. And then we said 80% level so that people who are in that donut hole, not really ever being able to get help, but not being able to afford anything, can also take part. So we have pretty generous income guidelines. And that's one element of program design we took into account, as well as the fact that this program does not exist in a vacuum, and we have to figure out how to work across so many different interest types, developers, labor, policy, other laws that are already in the books, working with utilities. So how can we get things accomplished in those spaces and negotiate with so many different players who have different priorities? Another major element of what we do is recruitment and education for low-income folks. We want to make sure that people understand very thoroughly what they're signing up for, and that we're asking people sensitive questions, that these sensitive questions are being asked by somebody who's used to asking them. We are very good at creating safe spaces for folks when we're asking questions like, what's your income? That's a pretty major question to ask somebody. And it's not something that strangers ask one another. And then we connect them with projects. So it was really important to us to have a lot of benefits within the program. So for low-income folks, right, we are working with every single person, making sure that they understand what they're signing up for and that it's in a language they understand. And this is literally different languages. If people speak languages other than English, we're working with interpreters to make sure that people are getting it in the language they prefer. And also just the technical language that is difficult to understand, even if you're a native English speaker. What the heck are people talking about? And then we also wanted to make sure that the discounts were significant. Low-income folks save about 10 or 15% annually on their electric bills, and their bills never go up. You can transfer your subscription within the same household. So if people have multi-generational housing, then you could have your mother ages, and she can pass that on to her daughter if her daughter's taking over the utility bills, for example. And again, you can keep your subscription if you move. And that's the same with the whole general market as well. And we put on extra protections. So because low-income people move more frequently, are displaced more frequently, evictions, job changes, people are forced to leave their homes a lot more when they have lower incomes. So there are no sign-up fees or cancellation fees. All of that's forbidden in the rules. There are no late fees. There are protections around people not being able to pay their utility bills in full, and it works really beautifully with energy assistance. So we wanted to make sure that, right, all of the systems currently in place, they aren't having to choose between this is a lifeline system such as energy assistance and being able to get additional discounts and be part of the green movement. So these are a lot of things that we put into the design and took into consideration when we were making our recommendations and picking our battles in these decision-making spaces. So to participate for low-income folks, it's pretty easy. They just talk to us. They can schedule an appointment with us. We do an intake with folks. This is a place for, you know, where this is your time. What are your questions? Do you want an overview of the program? What are benefits, potential risks, et cetera? And then we ask questions around income, demographic information, and then their utility information so we can connect them to the project. Then they're either placed on a wait list or connected directly with the project manager at that point. People can choose their projects if they like. We haven't had a lot of interest in that. If they don't choose a project, we simply put them in the most desirable project available at the time, and desirability is chosen by savings, and mostly it's what turns on first. A lot of these projects are currently being built, and you can sign up for a project before it's even like turned on or even finished being built. And then the day that that system turns on, everybody knows. For those who are not low income, you would just go to OregonCSP.org and you would go over to Project Finder. And from there, you would just scroll down and you can click on any of these. You would look at who's accepting participants currently. And then you can click on, so if I was like, oh, here, I really want to sign up with Adorable Solar Name, and you click on that, and that's going to take you to a profile of who, you know, what's the contact information, where is it, and a lot more information. It's like pages of information. You can learn all about the project, and you can decide what your priorities are. There's actually a filter, like if you want it to be like, oh, I really want to sign up for something in Central Oregon, I'm in Central Oregon. You can filter by city if you want to try to find the one closest to your community, or whatever your priorities are, which one's turning on first, that sort of thing. And then of course you want to also make sure that you're looking at your utility. If you're Pacific Power, you cannot sign up for a Portland General Electric project. That simply won't work. So that is my flyby. And I'm ready for questions whenever you guys are ready to have them. I'm also going to throw up here contact information from my team. If you're interested in signing up yourself, you can reach out to Olivia right here. If you're interested in, say you have a nonprofit and you really want to connect your participants to a project, Haley Mountain is a wonderful person for you to contact.
Thank you very much, Sherrie. What a great visual on your presentation, and so packed with information that's valuable. One of the things you had there was what can people do if they don't qualify for the guidelines you had on that screen? What is the action they should take if they somehow fall outside those guidelines?
So that is where you go to. I'm going to drop it in here. That's the Oregon Community Solar Program website, OregonCSP.org. And then you would go to the project finder for there, and then find yourself a project that you're interested in and reach out to that project manager and say, I'd like to sign up. What are my next steps? And then that project manager should be ready to walk you through everything from their timeline and how things are going and what you can expect and how to size you appropriately so you get the right energy profile that you need.
So if they don't qualify for the income guidelines, they still can participate in community solar?
Yes. As a low-income facilitator, I'm a little focused. Sorry, I'm focused on the low-income side of things. We just don't have a whole lot to do with the general market, but in the new round, there's been a bunch of new capacity released, 79 megawatts of new capacity, and the rules state that 40% of that must be individuals of that general market, must be for individual subscribers. So I would say in the next 6 months or so, there's going to be a lot more opportunity for people to sign up as individuals.
Okay, and Clint, do you have a question there you need to answer live, or?
Yeah, there was a couple. One of them about batteries and why not to do them. And I guess like there are places in Central Oregon, that's where I'm at, but there are places where batteries make sense where you can't be on the grid and you have to be 100% off grid. Yeah, batteries are great. There are places where you're on the grid, and if you have power outages for days, then maybe batteries make sense. But most of the time, the only reason in Oregon to get a battery would be to protect yourself against power outages. And frankly, the cost of batteries, the lifetime of batteries, and how well they work, it's better to do a generator or a generator switch. And there's a lot of better opportunities that for cheaper. And then the other one was about the tax credits, and really it's case by case, but it's based on your tax liability, which is the amount of tax, federal taxes that you pay throughout the year. And if you pay more than my tax credit, then you're gonna get all of that money back year one. It's the same as a tax refund, right? You get that money back. Now, if my tax credit is $10,000, but you've only paid in $5,000 to the federal tax, you're only going to get 5,000, pardon me, $5,000 back year one, but you have up to 5 years to claim it. And let's see, can you talk about how your systems are battery ready? Yeah, I mean, all I am is your house is now its own power plant. It's making its own power. You're hooked up to the grid. So batteries, frankly, are you can get a battery without going solar because then the grid charges your battery. But once the technology gets there, once batteries now last 15 years, 20 years, I'm going to call every single one of my customers and say, go batteries now. They make sense. But for right now, for you to, it's a hell of a commission for me to get $15,000 for a battery. I walk away from those customers because they're going to be dissatisfied in a couple of years. And I want you to say Purelight did the right thing. So no, batteries in a bit, but not right now.
Yes,
Hope
and
that
you
answers
know,
your
the
question.
technology is changing so quickly, so it's good to know that you are installing systems that are battery ready anyway, but it's also good to keep up with these things because it may happen sooner than you think. But I think also, Sherrie, you have a question. Did you see that in the Q&A? And you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah,
There you go.
I just clicked on it. It says, are there projects available in Central Oregon through Pacific Power? Yes, absolutely. I can say that Pacific Power is a little bit behind PGE as far as like project availability, but I can't speak to if it's a bit of a wait list, I would say. So I know that for low income folks, we just have folks kind of hanging out on a wait list, and as soon as projects are available to sign people up to, we're going to do that. But if you look on the project finder on that website, you'll see Pacific Power has quite a few projects happening. I'll say too that COVID and even like, remember how the Panama Canal got clogged up? A lot of things have disrupted materials coming in and have caused a lot of delays. There's shipping delays going on right now and things like that. So for Pacific Power customers, it's definitely an active patience. But the sooner you sign up, the sooner you like are on a list that you get turned on for. So yeah, Pacific Power is great. And more capacity is going to open up with this second tier. I don't know the exact timeline on that, but I think it would safe to say it's probably going to be in the next 6 months or so.
Oh, okay. Let's see. The other thing is you and I talked before, Sherrie, and it used to be that nonprofits were having a difficult time, nonprofit organizations that can also do community solar, that they were having a hard time with those, a challenging time with those projects. Has that changed at all?
It's being a project manager is quite a heavy lift. I'm not going to lie. You have to have a lot of funding to build these enormous projects. A 360 kW project, is going to cost $1 million. So I think that speaking as a nonprofit, is solar in your mission? Do you have the technical expertise to talk through things like interconnection and financing and finding a space that doesn't violate soil permits and things like that? We are working on making that a lot better. There's a special carve out. 25% of all the capacity was carved out special for community-based organizations and nonprofits that went, like all the rest of the capacity went like overnight in a lot of spaces, right? So having that space was carved out went way slower, which was the point, so that you have, you know, organizations that are like a little bit slower and they're learning and they're going through this learning curve, and, you know, writing a grant takes a long time and things like that. Now they're looking at what are the barriers, because a lot of that capacity simply was never used. So we're like, well, what are a lot of the barriers? And they're going to make it so that project managers can work with community-based organizations differently. So the CBO doesn't have to like own and be responsible for the next 2 decades for that array. And they can help with outreach or connecting their clients to it. And so that'll be a lot easier. And then Energy Trust of Oregon is looking at like, how can we create a much more accessible program when we're talking about the technicals? How can you get a little bit more hand-holding through that process? So we're pretty excited about it. We're talking with local funding like Portland Clean Energy Fund, who might be willing to finance really large arrays fully, that sort of thing.
And yes, so we're talking about nonprofit organizations, perhaps larger organizations with a large constituency that might be the participants in this community solar program. But sounds like that expertise factor, they'll have to search, might have to search elsewhere to get that. So I think that, Clint, there is a question that's probably most appropriate there for you about, and I don't understand this, but amorphous solar panels, and what about shady roofs?
You know, what's funny is, as I saw that question, I had to Google it myself. We do monocrystalline panels. It's the top of the line. It's the bread and butter for everybody. And the amorphous sounds like kind of an older technology that, like what I was reading, you have to, they cost less, but you have to put on more panels. And we just decided now we're going to do one panel for everybody. It's going to be monocrystalline, which is the top of the line. So the amorphous, those are the ones that kind of what I was looking at had like the white border and the white cells that you can see. So if a little bit of it is shaded, then it might produce a little bit better. So yeah, if I was in a shady area, that's probably a good example. But no, us as a company, we're the Henry Ford model that you get one panel as long as it's you know, black. So no, that's not an option through us.
I just wanted to mention the one thing that Craig did for us is we have a partially shady roof too. And we're going with 16 panels. And the one thing that Clint was kind enough to do is he showed us through some program that you have how much each one of those solar panels produces in terms of energy. And so we could look and decide, is that a solar panel that we want to put on? Do we want to put on this many or do we put on less? So that was helpful. So I'm looking at the chat and I think that, and the Q&A, and I'm not seeing any other open questions. Is there anything that you want to add, Sherrie, before we close?
I don't think so. I dropped in the website. If anybody here is interested in the low income program, you can find that on the same website under subscribers, and you can look at low income, but the website's really informative, but we're happy to answer questions if you think of something in the near future. Thanks for the opportunity.
And did you also put the link in there that they could go to find the projects? I believe there was a request for that as well.
I did. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
that's the OregonCSP.org website.
Okay.
Takes you to the whole beast.
Great. Okay. Well, I think then that we will close this session. We once again regret that we had a lockdown due to a shooter here that was actually a false alarm, but we were quite happy it was a false alarm. It's never great to be locked into a room and not know what's happening outside of your area. But thank you very much for joining us for the conference and for this session. And thank you to both of you, Sherrie and Clint, for having such a great presentation for the conclusion of our conference. But before you go today, we have one last word from 350 Deschutes. We would like to also ask you at the conclusion of this session, you will get a link to a survey. And if you could complete that, that would really help us because we always need improvement. So please tell us what you liked and what you didn't like. Thank you so much. We hope to see you next year.
Hi, my name is Kay Watanabe. I'm a board member with 350 Deschutes. We're fostering an environment, a healthy environment, a safe environment, so that you and all of Central Oregon can benefit from that now and in the future. Please consider supporting our work by donating to 350deschutes.org. That's /donate. Thanks so much. Hope you're having a great day.